Slavery is back.
Welcome to a place where private business profit from a captive labour force, yet pennies are spent on medical services to a population in which the Indigenous, the poor and the mentally ill are overrepresented. Where isolation, humiliation and degradation are facts of life. Welcome to prison.
It depends who's telling the story, I suppose. The prisoners would have one view, the people who work in the prison system would have another, and I think it's up to people to decide where the truth is.
Give government propaganda and the media spin doctors the flick. And check out Doin' Time for news, views and tunes on prison issues from Guantanamo Bay to Christmas Island to prisons and detention centres everywhere. Every Monday at 4 p.m. on your community radio 3CR.
We are still fired up and we're still talking about revolution.
Hello and welcome to the Doin' Time show. This is 3CR Community Radio, 855 AM on the dial, streaming live on www.3cr.org.au. This is Marissa and Peter.
Hello.
And we're going to be presently speaking with Pamela Curr, who was in the position formerly, previously in fact, of the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre, and now she's doing a lot of activist work in regards to asylum seekers and refugees. And as listeners are aware, there was a terrible tragedy recently of Hamed, and Peter will provide us with a small intro presently about that, about Hamed, who was found hanging from a tree. Peter will speak about this in a minute, and so we'll be interviewing Pamela about that, and she's going to be speaking to us about violations of human rights on Manus Island,
Nauru,
and we're going to be speaking about other issues too. And then after that, we're going to be listening to some radio commentary that Peter has prepared in regards to prison radio, and he's going to be doing some Mumia Jamal commentaries amongst other topics. So stay tuned. And Peter, I'll hand over to you, and you can perhaps give the intro now.
Oh yeah, from in Al Jazeera News, human rights violation in Nauru, officials say. That's one intro.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the in the Guardian, there's a refugee, Hamed, found dead on Manus Island. He was found hanging by a tree, and refugees on Manus Island are questioning the initial reports that he had committed suicide after injuries were reportedly found on his body. And he had mental health problems. So that's the intro.
Okay, so basically you're going to be talking to Pamela about that,
yeah.
and also for her to give some background about Nauru as well as Manus Island additionally, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
This is the Doin' Time show, and we are bringing listeners an interview with Pamela Curr, who is a refugee advocate. Hello, Pamela. Welcome to the program.
Hello to you.
Lovely to have you. Now, we were just wondering if you could just let listeners know what's been happening in regards to this terrible tragedy that has occurred with Hamed, who is, I believe, a refugee from Manus Island, who was found hanging from a tree. Is that correct?
Yes. Hamed was a young man from Iran.
Yes.
Who arrived on Christmas Island at the time when everybody was being carted off to Manus and Nauru. And that's how he wound up on Manus Island. He was brought down here for medical treatment, for surgical treatment in 2014, and that's where I got to know him. Unfortunately, he was pulled out of the detention centre with 7 others at 2 o'clock in the morning and sent back to Manus some time after that in 2015. Now, when I knew him here, he had an orthopaedic problem, which after many months was finally operated on, and he was disturbed by the violence on Manus Island, which he'd witnessed when the local people broke into the camp and killed Reza Barati. But he was in no way in the condition which we've heard described recently. What happened was Hamid was taken back to Manus and put back in the camp, and there his mental state deteriorated. I had a friend this week, a friend of Hamid's, ring me and say how Hamid supported him when they first arrived on Manus, that he played the guitar and he used to make up songs, and he said he was a great support to all of us. But what happened, of course, was slowly but surely, after 4 years, Hamid's mental state deteriorated.
Yeah, Pamela, I wanted to offer my sincere condolences on behalf of listeners about Hamid, on behalf of the Doing Time show, and I'd also like to give you a sincere apology of the way the question that I asked you was quite sketchy and vague, in that there really hasn't been a lot of information in the mainstream media about this tragedy. Does that make sense? And so it's extremely difficult for us to see exactly what's happening.
This is the 5th death on Manus Island. Deaths from murder, from medical neglect, and from suicide. And it's a terrible thing to think that we've put people in this place where they are clearly not safe, and that what they face now is on the 31st of October, the camp is going to be pulled down, closed, finished. The men are going to be dumped to destitution in PNG. I read from a report from the local psychiatrist in the Manus Hospital, who said this week that there was no plan in place for the care of these men. There is no evidence that they're going to get any sort of income support, that they'll have anywhere to live. And as we know, there's a high rate of unemployment in Papua New Guinea, and people survive by having tribal family affiliations. These people have none of that, and they are not welcome, and that's why they're so at risk. Hamid was facing all this, and clearly it all got too much for him. To be quite honest, we don't know the exact circumstances of his death, and that is why we're asking for proper coronial inquiry in Australia to find out exactly what happened. We don't know if he was murdered or if he indeed committed suicide. We don't know. What we do know is that he was terribly unwell, and that he was receiving no treatment, and that he was put into the transit accommodation in Lorengau because they couldn't deal with him in the camp, and that the local people were picking on him and attacking him, and that he had been assaulted. He'd been put in the local prison for weeks on end when he was mentally unwell. This is primitive treatment that this man was given.
Extremely.
It's no wonder that he died.
And apparently a lot of the asylum seekers believe that allegedly he had injuries before on his body before he committed suicide.
There's a lot of information which needs to be thoroughly investigated and tested. We can't just assume. Of course, it's convenient to assume that this man took his own life, but that is not. We can't just assume that.
No. We can't, and in fact, Pamela, that's why I asked you that leading question at the beginning of the interview, to show listeners that in fact, it has been extremely difficult to get information because there's such a shroud and element of secrecy in regards to the media now, in regards to what the government's giving out.
Yes, that's right. And of course the government doesn't want to draw attention to the appalling conditions in which these people are living and the shameful way that they're treating them.
It is indeed shameful. And the other question I wanted to ask you as well is that would you say that this could be partly not just the death, but a lot of issues that have happened in terms of power being cut off and resources being withdrawn from the camps? Is that to do with the fact, do you think, in your view, that the Australian government wants the asylum seekers to leave? Because they've got nowhere to go now, because America won't take them, will they?
Well, that is still up in the air, although many of us feel that it's unlikely to happen. If you look, there's around 750 men still in the camp. Then down the road there's this so-called transit accommodation where people who are found to be refugees get moved to. There's space there for, I believe, 198 men, but it's already, there are people in there. There is no space to accommodate the 750 men from the camp. So what is going to happen to them? The government's trying to force them down the road, but there's nowhere for them to be. There's not enough rooms. And the men themselves in the transit accommodation are told to be in there by dark. Don't go out after dark, because that's when you will risk being assaulted and murdered. And week after week we hear of attacks on these men with bush knives, with machetes. We see the photographs of the injuries. The people are quietly moved, if they can't treat them in the Manus hospital, to Port Moresby. There is so much evidence that these people are not safe in that place, and the Australian government is trying to ignore it.
And there's the human rights, UN officials said there's human rights violations in Nauru anyhow, isn't there? In
Nauru as well?
Yes, the situation in Nauru is almost as parlous. We know that there have been multiple attacks on local people in Nauru, the refugees living in the community in Nauru, and that camp also. What is the future of these people? They can't stay on Nauru. The Nauru government don't want them. They have to have somewhere to go. And, this constant refrain, we'll find a third country. It's been 4 years that they've been looking for a third country, and there is no third country. The Cambodian solution, $70 million later, 4 or 5 people went there, and they've all left. They tried to force Timor, the Philippines, a whole lot of other countries. They've tried to force them to take people, and they're not into it. It's just, really, Australia has to face the fact that these are our refugees. They are our responsibility, and they're human beings who deserve safety. We should be bringing them here and settling them here. We can do it. We bring in 200,000 migrants every year.
Yeah.
What is 2,000 people? It's nothing.
No, it's not.
It's not.
They've already got, many of them have got connections here, family members.
Yeah.
They're people who can contribute.
Yeah, look, and the stop the boat policy has definitely happened with the Liberal government, hasn't it?
Well, the claim is made that if they allow these people to come here, the boats will start. We have the Australian Navy stationed up there in the Indian Ocean blocking the boats. The boats are not stopping because we're being cruel to people in offshore camps. The boats are stopping by physical force. There is no excuse for the cruelty that we are perpetrating on these people.
There is no excuse, and the question that I often ask refugee advocates, and I know I'm probably asking it again and again, and I sound like a broken down record, but what's going to happen, Pamela? What's going to happen with all these asylum seekers in the end? It's like they're in limbo here.
They are in limbo, and I don't believe that the Australian government really know what is going to happen, and that is why there's this state that people are suspended in.
And people being ill, and now this latest tragedy of this man dying, and all this speculation in the media. Do you know there's barely anything in the media about this poor man with Ahmed? Nothing at all. I haven't seen anything.
No, but I can tell you that he's got there's a legal representative for the family, and they are working hard to see if they can get a coroner inquiry and get a proper investigation of his death and represent the family's interests.
Absolutely.
This family lost their son far away from them. They deserve to at least know what happened.
Well, let's hope that a coronial inquiry does occur, and I'm hoping that there have been respectful arrangements put in place for this man's death in terms of memorial and all of that type of stuff.
Yes, well, at this stage, I don't think the body has yet been sent to Iran.
Right.
But there are people, lawyers representing the family to ensure that these things happen. And they need representation because we can't rely on the decency of the Australian government. No.
And the Australian government is, pretty full on. Everyone goes on about the American government, and Australia's got a lot of human rights violation here as well.
Yes, that's right. If you look at, it starts with the first people, the Aboriginal Australians.
They're still doing it.
The high rates of incarceration, the imprisonment, the cruelty to young Aboriginal children. And then we come to the latest arrivals. We have deep human rights problems in this country which have not been resolved, and we really do need a human rights law that can be enforced, because at the moment we don't have that. We have to rely on so-called goodwill, and it's just not working.
Well, look, it's no use having the Aboriginal people included in the Constitution if we can't have a treaty and fix up some of this unfinished business that's happening.
Yes, and congratulations to the Yarra Council starting at a grassroots level on this decision on the 26th of January. I think that they deserve support for that because they're going to be slated for it. Why should we call it Australia Day when it's the day that does not represent all Australians?
Pamela, that's extremely important, and it's indeed it's a start, isn't it? It's definitely a start.
Yes, yeah. Yes, the human rights start at the grassroots, the ones that endure. No politician ever woke up one morning and felt a little kindly and thought, I must introduce human rights today. They were only introduced by people at the grassroots level fighting hard for them.
Thank you so much for coming onto the program, Pamela. Do you have any final comments before we finish?
Just to remind people that on the 8th of 8th of October, there's going to be, across the nation, huge rallies for the refugees offshore. We are really desperately concerned about what's going to happen to people after the 31st of October in Manus, and also what's going to happen to the families on Nauru. So if people can get out and tell their friends, show their bodies in numbers to the politicians that we do not agree. What is being done in our name is a shameful thing, and we're going to stand up against it.
Thanks very much, Pamela.
And so mark your diaries,
Thank you.
listeners, 8th of October. Thanks a lot, Pamela.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that was Pamela Curr. She's a refugee advocate. And that was Black Supremacy by Divide and Dissolve, a Melbourne band.
Trump's America and ours. The shockwaves from Charlottesville, Virginia, are resonating around the world. The roiling river of hatred that rolled through the city featured a panorama of paranoia, stars and bars, swastikas, Nazi regalia, Klan crosses, and Trump hats. They are America's hidden face, now open for all to see. They are America. They are the razor's edge of the millions who heard Donald J. Trump's inane claim that Obama was born in Africa. This was Trumpese for he's not one of us. He's not a real American like us. Get it? Wink, wink. This, the aging population of a dying generation, is the unseen undertow that floated Trump to the Oval Office. And to ask Trump to disavow or condemn them or their beliefs is like asking grapes to condemn jelly. It can't honestly be done. For they are a part of him, and he is a part of them. Thus we see Trumpism unmasked. Make America great again indeed. Charlottesville is the illegitimate son of Charleston, South Carolina. 2 cities, 1 example. White rage on full boil, open, visible, present. The grievances of people who have been betrayed by capitalism, by corporate flight, by NAFTA, and by the turning, clicking clock of change has become the fuel for attacks on the eternal other. Blacks, Jews, Latinos, students, anyone deemed not truly white. Make America great again. Make America hate again. Make America white again. That's Trumpism. How can Trump denounce himself from imprisoned nation? This is Mumia Abu Jamal. These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio. David Jones, killed by cop. His name, David Jones. In his 31st year of life, about to embark on the adventure of a lifetime, marriage, and founding a family in Philadelphia. He loved riding dirt bikes, so he took his bike for a last spin and listed it online for sale. As a father and husband just recently turned 31, he was moving on, or so he thought. On June 9th, his last day on his dirt bike, he was stopped by a Philadelphia cop, Ryan Pownall, who said Jones was riding erratically. A stop, or rather a stop and frisk, and then disaster. Pownall allegedly fired a taser at Jones, and though it stunned him, it didn't stop him. He cast a pistol aside, left his bike, and ran for his life. Pownall pulled his pistol and fired, and Jones fell down, a smoking hole in his back, dead. This was June 9th, 2017, and afterwards, official silence from public officials, but not the people. Asa Khalif of Pennsylvania's Black Lives Matter and blogger-journalist Christopher Flood the Drummer Norris have broken the silence by megaphone and internet posts demanding that the mayor, DA, and police chief address the killing of David Jones. Every week since, and whenever public officials appear, BLM is there demanding justice for DJ. Working online and on the street, they are on the move for David Jones and committed to having the killer cop indicted and prosecuted. Their cry, justice for DJ, is only getting louder. From Imprisoned Nation, this is Mumia Abu Jamal. These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio.
bastard.
"3CR", always bringing you the latest union news.
They're coming after us at the moment. They want to get rid of penalty rates, the big push from businesses. They want to get rid of all the things that you and I have fought for.
So there's tens of thousands of jobs gone contracted out to sham contracting arrangements.
On 8:55 a.m. and on the web, 3cr.org.au.
Step C, a new death row. When I left death row, little did I know that I was entering another, quieter, non-obvious death row. Here, I'm not speaking of Pennsylvania's draconian life sentences, what I've called slow death row. No, I mean death by medical neglect and a malicious form of malpractice by the DOC's failure to treat the deadly liver infection, hepatitis C. At our court hearings in December 2015, we learned of the DOC's secret protocol, which explicitly refused to even consider treating any prisoner unless and until a person had esophageal varices, or in English, bleeding from one's throat. A federal judge sitting in Scranton, Pennsylvania, Robert Mariani, looked at that protocol and twice declared it unconstitutional. For lawyers, jailhouse lawyers, and especially you, members of the NLG, or National Lawyers Guild, this is your open door to bring law to the people, to save lives, not to mention help, and to make state DOC medical officials serve medical needs and not profit motives. I end on this note. Today, in Pennsylvania prisons, indeed in this very prison, prisoners are still being turned away because DOC Medical continues to apply its malicious and unconstitutional profit-driven protocol. Our work is not yet done. From Imprison Nation, this is Mumia Abu Jamal. These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio. Early morning, a time of rest, quiet, and repose. On August 8th, 1978, only the early birds in search of worms were steering. Also, cops assembled, heavily armed. They attacked the Move House in West Philadelphia's Powelton Village. Then, hundreds and perhaps thousands of shots poured into the house. How could we know the number? For before night fell, the building would be shattered, razed into the dark, wet earth. Water cannons pumped hundreds of gallons into the house, a deliberate attempt to flush Move people from their own communal home. When they emerged to escape drowning and bullets shot into the dark basement, men, women, and children arose from the murky waters to find themselves facing dozens of cops fiendishly pointing rifles and pistols at them. Instinctively, they raised their arms to show that they weren't armed, to avoid being shot by the maddened coterie of cops. Delbert Africa pulled himself out of a basement window, his arms raised above his back and chest bare, only to be rifle-butted, slammed with a police helmet, and when he fell, pummeled, kicked repeatedly in his face and head. When he appeared in court for arraignment some hours later, his left eye looked more like a golf ball than an eyeball. Saliva ran down his chin, reflecting his broken jaw. Almost all of the men were beaten. And what of the women? They were driven to the banks of the Delaware River, where they heard cops arguing amongst themselves. One cop would say, "Let's rape them and throw them into the water." They were rerouted and driven to the nearby House of Correction, a county prison, to await trial. What happened to them on August 8th, the holistic rain of police gunfire, beatings, rape threats, and incarceration, was nothing compared to what they faced in Philadelphia courtrooms, where they were denied their every right, including their alleged right of self-representation. beaten again when they refused to attend their own legal lynchings. And then the linchpin, convictions, and common sentences before Judge Edwin Malmed of 30 to 100 years for third-degree murder? Malmed, during a phone call from me to the Frank Ford Show at WWDB FM radio, where the judge was a guest, answered the question of who killed the cop by saying, I haven't the faintest idea. 9 people, 9 men and women, 9 MOVE members, and 30 to 100 years. Today, August 2017, marks 39 years in prison for MOVE members, of which 7 survive. Merle and Phil Africa have returned to the source under what can only be called suspicious circumstances. Another fact, none of the imprisoned MOVE sisters had weapons charges. Eddie Africa was never convicted of any degree of murder. His charges? Attempted assault. I kid you not. MOVE members are in prison today because they were MOVE members, period. They're guilty of nothing except resistance to a racist, brutal, corrupt system. The same system that gave rise to mass incarceration on a scale that the world has never seen before. Their sentences are an abomination. Free Delbert, Eddie, Mike, Chuck, Janine, Janet, and Debbie Africa. From Imprisoned Nation, this is Mumia Abu Jamal. These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio.
You're listening to 3CR 855 AM or www.3cr.org.au. We're listening to some podcasts of Mumia Abu Jamal from Prison Radio.
Australia is a crime scene. It's unfinished business, this crime. People got to understand that it was a military exercise. It was military in the First Fleet. It was Captain James Cook. It was Captain Arthur Phillip. Right through the history of Australia, it's a military exercise. Our people have suffered greatly because the white man is not prepared to act honourably and legally. It's still the case in this country today.
This is 3CR.
I'm Korea. I'm calling from Red Onion State Prison in Virginia. This commentary is about this long-term segregation, this long-term solitary confinement currently being practiced in Virginia. On February 2013, Virginia DOC implemented a program called Child and Serious Step-Down Program. In theory, the objective of this step-down program is to eliminate the practice of indefinite solitary confinement and facilitate ways for prisoners to make it back to the general population expeditiously by participating and completing the books offered. However, the objective completely contrasts with what is actually being enforced. Prisoners are either classified to special management, SM, or intensive management, IM, by the dual treatment team. For those classified as IM, they can qualify for general population status upon completion of the program. As for those classified as IM, they can never qualify for general population status despite having completed the program. And no matter how much one's behavior ameliorate, he is permanently held in segregation. During this arbitrary reclassification, prisoners were not awarded their due process rights, for we are not allowed to be present at the hearing. Therefore, unable to produce evidence, rebut, call witnesses, or appeal that classification, which confined us to indefinite solitary confinement. In the case of Austin v. Wilkerson, the courts ruled that the inmate must be allowed to appear at the reclassification hearing and present evidence, including witnesses and documents, in support of his position. And the reclassification committee must issue a written statement specifically describing the evidence relied on and the reasons for the recommendation. However, Virginia prison courts are not adhering by this due process mandate. Prison walls or fences do not serve as a barrier separating prisoners from the protection of the Constitution. Due process simply permits prisoners to challenge any status or classification. Condemning prisoners to indefinite solitary confinement and subjecting them to no human contact, indefinite solitary confinement, limited outside recreation, or locked in the individual dog cage, warehoused in a cell 23 hours a day, 365 a year, permanently, and the right to challenge those conditions is not unconstitutional, but torturous and inhumane, and the paradox of rehabilitation that prison courts rhapsodically promulgate to society. The pretense of rehabilitation has been used by psychological torture techniques in which prisoners are housed in solitary confinement for the duration of their sentence. For those who do not yet a comprehension of life in prison, indefinite solitary confinement is the most torturous experience a human being can be subjected to while in prison. It is non-stop punishment that is methodically designed to deteriorate one's mind and humanity. In order to lower the recidivism rates, prisoners must be properly rehabilitated and equipped with the right transitional skills needed to re-enter society. However, prison courts felt that abolishing genuine rehabilitation programs and torturing prisoners with indefinite solitary confinement would be more productive rather than rehabilitation. The issue of indefinite solitary confinement, is diminutive in comparison to the overall malfeasance that are perpetuated in prisons nationally, but that would require an entire different and longer commentary. So I would solely focus on this one for now. Anyway, I currently I respectfully ask anyone listening who might be able to assist us in this legal battle to please, log on to the court's website and check out my case pertaining this commentary, Peter K. McCurry versus Harold Clark. Peter K. McCurry, my last name McCurry, M-U-K-U-R-I-A, versus Harold Clark, etc. All 715-CV00172-JPJ, RSB number 16-7371. The case is currently pending in the Courts of Appeal. I'd appreciate if you could log on to the court's website and review the court's opinion pertaining to this matter. So thank you very much.
These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio.
You're with 3CR's doing Time Show. I'm Peter. We just heard some commentaries by Mumia and some other political prisoners in the United States. Now we're going to hear Anti-Flag. The song's called Racists. It's addressing Charlottesville, so it just came out, this song, in August the 15th. So we'll go to that now.